This edition of the Red and Blue Political Roundup, President Trump says ISIS should be wiped out in Syria by next week. The president made those remarks during a speech at the State Department Wednesday. He also repeated claims made in his State of the Union address when he said ISIS-held territory in Iraq and Syria had been liberated.
The United States military, our coalition partners, and the Syrian Democratic Forces have liberated virtually all of the territory previously held by ISIS in Syria and Iraq. 3 weeks ago, I was in Iraq, and I was talking to some of our great generals, and I gave them the absolute go-ahead. I said, go at it. How long will it take? Once you get started, he said, sir, 1 week. I said, where did that come from, 1 week? And he meant it. And it's about a week since they really got going, and they'll be informing us very soon, officially, that it's 100%.
And let's bring in now Jeff Mason. He's a White House correspondent for Reuters. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. Intelligence leaders contradicted the president last week. They said ISIS is degraded, yes, but not defeated. Has the White House provided any explanation for the president's claims?
Nothing beyond what the president said today, but you're right to point out that what the intelligence officers last week said, it does indeed contradict what the president said today. And the president didn't like what the intelligence folks said last week and clearly took issue with that and suggested afterwards that he had met with them and they had said that their words had been misconstrued. I mean, all of the reporting about what they said was based on exactly what they said, so I'm not sure what could have been misconstrued. Bottom line is the president is proud of the fact that a lot of progress has been made and has wanted to justify his decision to pull troops out of Syria. But, you know, I think we'll all be eager to see what this official announcement may or may not be in the coming week that suggests that 100% of ISIS's territory is no longer in their control.
Indeed. And Jeff, I also want to play some of what the president said about border security in his speech last night. Let's take a listen.
To confront an urgent national crisis, Congress has 10 days left to pass a bill that will fund our government, protect our homeland, and secure our very dangerous southern border. Now is the time for Congress to show the world that America is committed to ending illegal immigration and putting the ruthless coyotes, cartels, drug dealers, and human traffickers out of business.
So, Jeff, what is the latest you're hearing from the White House about a potential deal to prevent another partial government shutdown?
Well, it's kind of hurry up and wait at this point, both at the White House and I think on Capitol Hill, at least for the people who aren't involved in that committee who are working on coming up with a deal. The president certainly signaled last night that he'd like to see something come out of those talks. He did not go so far in his State of the Union address as to declare a national emergency or even to specifically threaten it as he has before. But we do know that that is something that he is seriously considering. He has said that repeatedly and said so publicly. So we'll just have to see if the members of that committee come up with a deal that is acceptable both to Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill and also to the White House.
Jeff, the White House also announced Wednesday that President Trump will host a rally in El Paso, Texas next Tuesday, my childhood hometown.
Nice.
What arguments do you expect to see him make there in Texas?
Well, I think you'll definitely hear him talk about immigration, and you'll definitely hear him talk about the need for a wall. He did visit the border, the U.S.-Mexican border, earlier this year. It's amazing we can already say earlier this year, but in January. And so this will be his next trip, at least near the border, for that rally. It will be his first rally, however, of 2019. And the fact that he's chosen that as the location, I think, suggests that he'll try to use it as an opportunity, maybe to pressure the members of those committees, or the member of that committee, to come up with a deal that funds the wall, which is what he's been calling for ages now, but in particular since December, and to rally support from his base in the off chance which is probably more than an off chance, that the deal that they come up with on Capitol Hill does not have that $5.7 billion in wall funding that he essentially shut the government down for in 2018.
But El Paso is an interesting place, and the people there do not unilaterally support the wall. It's got a huge Mexican-American community, so it will be interesting to see exactly what kind of reception the president gets there. Now, moving on, the president also addressed investigations into his administration in his State of the Union address. I want to play some of what he had to say about that.
An economic miracle is taking place in the United States, and the only thing that can stop it are foolish wars, politics, or ridiculous partisan investigations. If there is going to be peace and legislation, there cannot be war and investigation. It just doesn't work that way. We must be united at home to defeat our adversaries abroad.
Not surprisingly, House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff said ending investigations is a non-starter and they would not be intimidated. So is the White House starting to feel pressured by the number of investigations surrounding the president and his associates?
Well, I don't think that there's any more pressure necessarily today than there has been for the last several weeks or months. But the fact that he decided to address it in the way that he did last night in that very formal setting of the House of Representatives and the State of the Union address certainly suggests that it's something that he wants to stop. But the Democrats are in power now in the House of Representatives. They have made clear that they take it very seriously, that they have oversight responsibilities, and that includes these types of investigations if they deem necessary. But that is absolutely setting up a clash between the two sides of power, really, right here in Washington, the White House and the Capitol.
Yeah, I was sort of surprised he referenced the investigations as well, because that sort of draws attention to them. I thought he would leave that off. And of course, he's not the first president to be investigated. For all the topics President Trump mentioned in his address, there were also a number that he avoided. It's a long list, but it includes climate change, hurricane recovery in Puerto Rico, gun control, education, voting rights, and civil rights. So, Jeff, what do you make of what the president chose to say and what he chose not to say?
Well, whether you agree or disagree, the topics that you just listed are largely considered to be issues that Democrats would want to bring up. It's certainly not a surprise that he didn't talk about climate change. He's been very clear about some of his skepticism about the science of climate change and certainly of the United States position and being in the Paris Climate Accord under President Barack Obama. The President Trump, of course, pulled the United States out of that. Gun safety is a different topic because the president has suggested before that he wanted to do something about that after the horrific shooting in Florida. So, but the truth is he hasn't been talking about it much lately, and so I don't think it was a big surprise that it didn't come up in his State of the Union address. The other issues that you mentioned, as I said, are issues that Democrats find to be extremely important. Whether or not you understand or agree with the fact that voting rights, for example, is something that's more of a Democratic issue than a Republican issue is a separate question, but it's not something that he focused on in his speech.
All right, Jeff Mason of Reuters, we appreciate your time.
My pleasure.